morning, everyone. Esteemed industry leaders, respected faculty members, distinguished guests, and my dear friends. On behalf of SPJIMR family, I, Ankita Aishwarya,
and I, Ishan Panchmatya,
welcome you all to Samavesh 2022.
Samavesh is SPJIMR's annual Industry Academia Conclave, organized by the participants of the Postgraduate Program in Management, PGPM. This event is a platform for eminent thought leaders from industry and academia to discuss and debate contemporary issues in the fields of operation and supply chain, finance, information management, business analytics, and marketing. Before we begin, may we request all of you to put your phones on silent mode. Please continue to promote the event on social media using #Samavesh2022 through your posts and tweets. Thank you.
SPJIMR Institute of Management and Research, an integral part of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, was established in 1981. The institute mission has been to influence, practice, and promote value-based growth. A constant focus on development of not just skills and knowledge, but also attitude and spirituality is critical to the learner-centric pedagogy at SPJIMR. The curriculum instills competition-based efficiency and collaboration-based ethos in all participants.
PGPM is a one-year, full-time residential management program aimed at accelerating the careers of participants with over 5 years of experience. The USP of PGPM is enhancing the functional and managerial capabilities of participants with substantial corporate experience. It has a rigorous multi-stage admission process to select candidates with the skills, experience, and temperament to take up leadership roles. The program has state-of-the-art curriculum, instructors with rich experience in industry and academia, and a combination of classroom and experience-based learning. These features develop well-rounded professionals who are ready to take up leadership positions in multiple industries.
The PGPM class of 2022 has participants from diverse backgrounds, all of whom have high degree of functional and domain experience. This batch has 114 participants with an average age of 29 years and an average work experience of 6.5 years. We come from 15 different industries and varied educational backgrounds. The inherent diversity brings rich opportunities for peer-to-peer learning that are critical in the development of skills needed to work in cross-functional teams. This year, Samavesh has 4 conclaves: information management, finance, operations and supply chain, and marketing. The topic for today's operations and supply chain conclave is intelligent supply chains. Supply chains are indispensable to global business. The evolution of traditional supply chains towards smart, connected, and highly efficient ecosystem is the need of the hour. With the rapid development of information and communication technology, information communication technology like cloud computing and Internet of Things, new opportunities are available to build applications with better integrate the real world and the virtual world.
Intelligent supply chain management is possible when businesses take full advantage of the latest digital transformation technologies. It calls for the implementation and leveraging of modern technology to optimize various facets of supply chain, to collect data and develop deeper insights. These technology solutions also utilize big data, logistics patterns, and business trends to inform and optimize the entire digital supply chain.
We now request Professor Nilendra Singh Pawar, the Professor of Operations and Supply Chain and the Chairperson of PGPM, to come up on stage and set the context for the conclave.
First of all, a very warm welcome to all our esteemed guests from the industry and to other members of the SPJIMR family. And it's always great to see the PGPM batch. So I think it feels good to resume Samavesh in physical form. We have had some lockdown-related impact for the last couple of years, so it's great that we are starting off this event. And this event is very special for us for a few reasons. Firstly, I mean, besides the knowledge value added to our students, it's also has a very strong inspirational value. They get to know what's happening in the industry at the cutting edge, and therefore it makes them feel excited about the field where they intend to go. And also as an academic, I feel good to be part of this because I get to know about the recent trends. And it's a moment in our life to pause and reflect how do I want to reorient my teaching and research so that we are more in line with the industry needs. And lastly, it's also an occasion for us to build deep relationship or friendships with the industry partners, which we've done in the past. And I think it's always good to have strong industry experts who are just a phone call away for their thoughts and guidance. Coming to the theme of this year's conference on intelligent supply chains, I think it's obvious, we all know that technology is transforming the way we operate our businesses as well as supply chains. In fact, the lines between supply chain and technology is blurring quite fast. In my first company, in fact, the last two supply chain heads at Asian Paints are actually IT people. They're heading now manufacturing and supply chain. So I think the lines are quite blurred that way. So what it also means that in order to be a successful operations and supply chain professional, your technology skills need to be of a very high level. So it's placing greater demands on us. And with a esteemed panel like this and events like this, we do hope that this helps us build that competence. So we look forward to today's conversation. It will be of tremendous help to our students as well as to the faculty members. We also have with us our Dean, Dr. Varun. And just a brief introduction of him. He is an alumnus of IIT Bombay, and thereafter he got his MS, MBA, and PhD all from the US. He has a very strong technology background. He has served as a CEO of several startups in the US in the technology space. And incidentally, he was also a partner at PRTM, which is a consulting firm which gave us the SCORE supply chain model. So I think he's just the right person to set the ball rolling and introduce us to start off the event. So I'd like to invite Dr. Varun to share his thoughts, please.
Good morning, everyone. Glad you're here, and welcome, and thank you very much to our distinguished speakers who will be discussing and debating certain issues. And I thought, in order to seed that discussion, I was going to throw a topic out so that when they do discuss, they can debate the following concept. So that's sort of what I'll use my 5 or 7 minutes here for, is to have you think about something throughout your enclave, or through your series of 4 enclaves. So you've got 4 sessions coming up, and one common theme you're going to see across these 4 sessions is the role of technology in driving innovation in each of these 4 domains. So you're talking about intelligent supply chains. As you basically look at finance, you'll probably be going to look at sort of new innovations that are technology enabled in the fintech space with crypto and so forth. As you look at information management and business analytics by kind of definition, that is the sort of the core of what's driving innovation. And then even in the case of marketing, most new marketing innovations are being driven by technology in some fashion. So there is a common theme that runs across the 4 sessions, and the common theme is that of technology-driven innovation. But before we worship at the altar of technology-based innovation, let me point out all the flaws of technology-based innovation, okay? I have made my career essentially in the space of technology-based innovation, and so I feel I have earned the right to criticize technology-based innovation. And I would like you guys to be critical about technology. I would like you to be critical about innovation, and I'd like you to be critical about technology-based innovation. So let's basically look at what we mean by innovation, and why is it that we should be somewhat critical in our thinking about innovation and technology. Innovation refers to the creation of solutions that have 2 characteristics. An innovative solution is something that is useful, meaning it addresses an actual worthwhile problem, and as opposed to, let's say, you're just painting for painting's sake, and when somebody says they're an innovative painter, that's probably a misuse of the word innovation, because a painter isn't necessarily addressing a particular problem, right? So addressing a problem that is actually useful is the first attribute of what you would call innovation. The second reason why something is innovative as opposed to non-innovative is that your solution is novel or new. So keep in mind, people will use the word innovation loosely throughout your career, but it's a very, very straightforward, well-accepted definition that innovation shows 2 characteristics. It has utility, i.e. usefulness, and it has novelty, i.e. newness, right? So these are the 2 attributes that make up innovation. And throughout your careers in any of these domains, whatever your specializations might be, or as general managers and CEOs, you are going to drive these types of innovative solutions, things that are useful and things that are new. why then do I criticize innovation? I criticize innovation because not all innovation is necessarily good innovation. So I want you to think about a phrase called wise innovation. You know, wise is a heavy phrase, but I'm using it on purpose. What does wise innovation mean? And why is it that when you guys look to innovate, whether you're in industry or whether you're a student who is joining industry, you should always critically look at innovation and ask, is this wise or not? How are you going to ask that? You know, what exactly does it mean? If you look at the concept of the triple bottom line, which you guys all know about, it's basically trying to achieve a balance between people, profits, and planet. And I think we all would agree that typically when we think about innovation, we're automatically sort of relating innovation to profits, right? We're coming up with new solutions that drive new business models, that drive more money for folks, that drive greater valuations, and that drive greater utility too. So in a sense, you are thinking of people, but you're thinking of people in an extremely utilitarian sense, right? You're thinking of the immediate utility function or the benefits that someone might get from a 10-minute pizza delivery being cut down to 5-minute pizza delivery. Why? Because the cheese doesn't melt that much. As you can see, I'm not a huge fan of many of these, you know, extremely utilitarian types of innovations, and I'll get to that in a second. But essentially, when you're looking at innovation, and you're looking at the wisdom of innovation, you have to ask yourself if that innovation balances the three things. Does it balance the needs for the company to make a profit? Does it balance net benefits to the people, not just the individual function that you're trying to provide? And does it benefit the planet in some manner? So let me give you some examples of innovation that, in my opinion, are not wise. I'll give you one sort of from a marketing sense, but then I'm going to really focus on the operations and supply chain. I'm going to challenge my speakers to basically reflect upon whether the innovations that they're promoting in their consulting practices, in their products and so forth, meet the bar of wise innovation, right? So that's basically the challenge for our speakers today. So let's take a look at a marketing-based innovation we're all familiar with. Let's take a look at the like button, and let's take a look at the share button. The person who came up with the like button, a product manager at Facebook in the early days when they were still operating out of the Harvard dorms where Facebook was born, probably looked at it as a brilliant innovation. And you would have to agree that, you know, the like button is a part of our lives today. So was it a great innovation, or was it a not so great innovation? Now think about not just what it achieved in terms of product use, because that's sort of what it did. They were looking to create stickiness. They were looking to have people come back. And they were saying by having likes, it gratifies people, desire for feedback. It has people coming back to see how many more likes they got. It allows people to interact. It builds a community. Sounds good, right? On the other hand, there was a very dark side to the like button. It ended up having people get really anxious. It ended up basically hurting people's self-esteem. There was a study that basically linked teen suicide to essentially the use of the like button. So there's a set of externalities or a set of follow-on consequences to any innovation that the innovator often doesn't think through. Now, is it possible in hindsight that one could have looked at the like button when it got introduced and said these things could happen? Now, hindsight is always 20/20, but I would argue that if somebody had thought long enough about it, these were just human attributes that were latent, right? It is only a matter of thinking it through to realize that when you give positive and negative feedback and people's self-worth is determined by what their popularity is, that these kinds of consequences could happen. And the same would be true with the ridiculous share button that you have. So in WhatsApp, which is the greatest source of misinformation on the planet, when people just forward things from one to the other, okay, to a certain level, it is a matter of convenience. You send something on. But half the time, you have no idea where that information came from. And if it's a meme of a dancing cat, it's fairly harmless. But if it's something more profound than that, the harm from a share button can be pretty profound. A smart innovation on share might have basically insisted that any item being shared be flagged with where the source is, or where did it come from originally. So at least somebody who's receiving it is able to sort of say, okay, this is just bakwas. It's coming from some source that is known to be a creator of random information. You might also limit the number of times something can be shared, and they did that subsequently, before you disable a share, because you don't want misinformation like happened in India about kidnappings and so forth to be basically shared that quickly in community. So these are examples of what we sit and worship at the altar of social media, we worship at the altar of technology innovation, and I think both of them are crappy. Both the like button and the share button, to me, have lots of problems. So, and I only use that to use a common example, but now let's talk about on the supply chain side, right? And on the manufacturing side, end to end. Let's begin with sort of the manufacturing process. Manufacturing anything has a set of pollutants that come with it. It has sets of external or externalities that get created. Almost anything produces carbon dioxide, right? Any kind of activity. Now, these kinds of sort of extraneous effects can get captured in the market when you have a carbon tax, for example, or a pollution tax or carbon credits and so forth. But it is also the responsibility of the manufacturer to try and minimize these other impacts on people and the planet. So thinking through sort of the upstream aspects, if you will, of production is an important thing if you happen to be a supply chain person. And I would argue we have made sufficient progress there. Thinking about, for example, where you're sourcing materials from, the use of child labor or not, the use of conflict materials or not. These are all upstream parts of the supply chain where you, as a supply chain professional, have to be conscious of the fact that the decisions you're making, the innovative, great decisions you're making, how are they impacting these type of issues? Are you creating a worse planet by manufacturing something? Are you exploiting child labor? Are you basically promoting conflict by using minerals from Congo, from an area that is conflict-ridden? These are in the upstream space. We have folks today that are experts in warehouse management, right? You know, if you look at Blue Yonder and you look at the demand planning kinds of things. And the challenge to them would be the following. I'll give you an example from Amazon. At Amazon, they did a study looking at not just the efficiency of how quickly things get produced. So once an order comes in, how long does it take to basically get something done and delivered? So if that's the metric you use, you would use a set of optimization algorithms that are squarely centered around minimizing the amount of time that transpires from when an order comes to when an order is fulfilled. But what about how the order gets fulfilled? So this study found that essentially Amazon employees walk about 20 kilometers a day within their particular warehouse with breaks that are very minimum and very small. Now this kind of a function can be part of a mathematical algorithm, but the fact is most of the algorithms are not trying to optimize between time to actually pick and pack and the minimum amount of time that it might take somebody within a warehouse to go and walk. These algorithms exist. You know, Professor Nilendra was talking about the fact that there are all these algorithms that should allow you to balance the needs, in this case, of people. So I'm not talking about the planet, right? I'm just talking about the people and profits. You absolutely should be looking to balance the needs of people and profit. But the algorithms that get picked oftentimes by Amazon and others are those that are looking to maximize profit only. And that, to me, is not wise innovation. You can pat yourself on the back all you want. In my book, it is a failing grade when it comes to innovation. Then let's take a look at the ridiculous obsession with last mile delivery and the companies that are springing up trying to take 20-minute delivery down to 10 minutes to 5 minutes. And it's at one point you have to ask, is this worth it? Look at the amount of waste that gets produced with packaging. You know, I have a friend who orders 4 idlis or whatever, and then 5 minutes later decides that, you know, oh, they need to raise the order by 2, and now come 2 separate packages. They could have probably been consolidated, but if your promise is a 5-minute delivery time, of course they're not going to get consolidated. So we waste essentially packaging, we create landfill, we create trash. We talk a great game about saving the planet, but our consumer behaviors run exactly opposite to saving the planet. So in the last mile, us as consumers, I believe, are driving a very destructive tendency towards instantaneous delivery that seems to have no limits. What is good enough in this particular case? So you look at last mile delivery, I think there are problems on the planet side that are coming about. So you might be looking to optimize profit by being more competitive, but I believe you're damaging the planet in the particular process. Also look at the amount of emissions that get created. Look at the traffic that gets generated, right? These are externalities that you as an innovator have to be aware of. You cannot sort of say, I have one utility function that I'm trying to maximize around profits. And so profits, people, and planet, there is a reason why the notion of the triple bottom line makes sense. And there's a reason why innovation should be driven by considerations of more than just profit. So in today's enclave, in the operations and supply chain side, so setting a high bar for you guys, hopefully, you know, and I hope each of you in your pieces will address how your innovations and your work are also considerate, you know, and sensitive to these other issues of people and planet in addition to just profit. And I hope that the speakers in the other conclaves will do the same. And if they don't, I hope you in the audience challenge those industry speakers to talk about how they're achieving balance between the triple bottom line objectives. Okay, with that, I think we should have fun. So, this is amazing, this event that you guys host, and frankly, it wouldn't be possible without the industry folks. So I hope you don't mind my challenging you guys to think a little more aggressively on your feet today. But honestly, we benefit from your experience and your reflections. So thank you very much for gracing us with your presence today, and enjoy the set of conclaves, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Nagaraj and Professor Pawar. I'm sure that was thought-provoking and has raised the curiosity levels in everyone's minds here. We take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our keynote speaker for the day, Mr. Sriram PS. He's the Joint Executive President at UltraTech Cement. He is responsible for the profit and loss and steering the strategy for people, process, and product at the company. Mr. Sriram has greenfield projects and scaling up expertise in China and India. He comes with rich experience in plant operations, Lean Six Sigma, Industry 4.0 digitization, and project management. Prior to this, he has worked with Alstom Transport as director and at Daimler India Commercial Vehicles as executive vice president. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. May we invite you to the stage for your presentation.
Good morning, all. First of all, thanks, SPJIMR. It's an honor, it's a pleasure to me to be part of this conclave. So before I start, I want one round of strong applause to me, because I'm not sure after my lecture I'll get that or not. So thanks a lot. So I'll start with a topic which is basic or rudimentary about data. Able to start from here?
You can start it.
Yeah.
You can change it to the slide.
Yeah. I say data G. Data G is like Modi Ji, Shah Ji. It's like that. It's that important. The crude oil of 20th century and 21st century, it's data. I'm not stating something new, but it is going to drive all our decision-making process, business, the entire intelligence, including supply chain, is going to be based on that. So how are you going to give importance to that? We have to govern data to get a meaningful insight or intelligence out of it. That's why we have AI, ML, DL, all new data, new algorithms or models with platforms which are getting created. So through this, what are you going to achieve? Through data governance. I'll touch upon why it is required. What we are aiming is to get governance based on data. Governance means end to end. I always say it's people, product, and process in a plant, in a manufacturing plant. These three P are crucial. Of course, profit is also an important factor. So how do you do this? Then we all will be knowing about the volume of data, what is getting created, even in a plant location. Plant locations are not that, still not progressive. I would say still not that marched ahead in terms of Industry 4.0. They are investing, they are learning, but there are a lot of mindsets and other things. Even there, the volume of data which are getting generated are phenomenally high. Most of the equipments, facilities, machineries, which were earlier not connected, Now, I am sure most of the industry, I have experience of about 2.5 decades in automotive and very little experience in cement. Most of the equipments are interconnected now, not necessarily through IoT, but through hard wires, optical fibers and hard wires, and it's getting connected now. So we get huge amount of volume of data. And second thing what we get is, velocity of data. Velocity of data is 10 microseconds. That's the speed which the data comes in and goes out. Many times we don't decide whether that amount of velocity of data is required or not, because the technology, the sensor technology, the internet, they are all capable of transmitting that speed of data to you. But most of the time, they are all very generally standardized and it's not optimized. So the information which is flowing through data are phenomenally high. Then third is about the variety of data. Variety, it is normally numerical, alphanumerical, video, audio, combination of all these things. So you get varieties of data within the plant. So this also to be managed. Then finally, the veracity of data. What do you mean by veracity of data? You get fake news, fake reviews. You get fake data also from the plant side. There are sensors which are malfunctioning. It completely distorts the decision-making process. You have to identify and you have to rectify it and fix it also. All these four, we should give you what is called as value to your entire intelligence or digitalization or everything. See, you need to classify data to govern it. As I said, these 4 V's are giving you very huge mammoth amount of data, a monster. You are creating that. So how do you classify these data? Most of the data have to be classified with tagging. Tagging in terms of electronically, you have to say this is a temperature, this is a weight, this is this type of measurement. This is also not normally done from this particular location, this from particular machinery. This is also not done. Then other one is physically. When a sensor malfunction, then we have to know which location it is, which equipment it is, which point of location it is in the equipment. This is also to be done so that the data creating out of it is normal. Then ownership. Surprisingly, I had done a review and I'm only 12 months old in cement industry. I visited what is called a CCR, in a normal cement guy will understand, central control room. There are 39,000 data points are there. And every 10 microseconds it changes, data points. Only in cement plant, there are 17,000 odd, let us say 18,000 data points are there. It is governed by 4 people, 24/7, seeing 6 screens. And unless it is segregated, they are controlling the entire plant through the 4 TV screens. It's not segregated by person, by section, department, function, hierarchically. It's not done. So this has to be area to be covered. Then prioritizations. There are priorities to be assigned to the data, which are very critical, immediately to be attended, can be postponed to an hour, to a shift, to a day, to a week. Then chronological of event. It's nothing but date-wise, month-wise, year-wise. Then general characteristics. It can be conditional through PID loop. Instrumentation engineers can understand that, it's a PID loop, and now it can be conditionally done. And basic construction of data. So we have to do these classifications to derive meaning out of the data. Then, why an agile platform is required? This is where the intelligence supply chain role comes into play. Every month, every week, I would say, we are adding new platforms in terms for digitalization, for safety, for quality, for cost, for people. So many digital platforms are getting added, and they create huge amount of data. It's not that one particular module you create AI or ML, then you stop there. Across the platforms, we have to transfer data, read data, give intelligence to data, group data, cluster data. All these things has to happen. So unless we have a common platform to integrate the entire thing, we are going to create a data monsters in the whichever business we are in. So what should be the characteristics of this platform? First of all, data structure should be neutral. Why I say this? Perhaps some of you would have used Oracle, SAP, Ramco. They have very rigid data structures. Only if you put this data into a particular table, it will start reading it. You need a separate IT team, IT service team to do that. It's not done at a shop floor level easily by a normal person. So that's why I said it should be data agnostic. Second thing, it should be change management friendly. You add data, delete data, restructure data. What do you mean by restructure data? You measure weight in kilogram yesterday, you have to measure weight in grams today. So many things you have to do. It's an ongoing day-to-day activity. So unless you do have a platform which is going to complement the change management friendly, again, it will create a chaos. The last one, most of the new platforms which are coming, they charge based on the number of users. So that means the data is not percolated down across the organization. It is restricted based on the number of users. Because IT security comes into play, they don't share password. So you are indirectly restricting the use of intelligence data. Then capability. After all, the platforms cannot run business completely. You need people to understand platform, to execute things. The cement plant is also running in auto mode. There are ML platforms, AI platforms which are there, but they need to be constantly evolved, for which we need people. So unless you create subject matter experts on a continuous basis who can understand digital way of working, it will be a packet of excellence. Or what I normally say as a Dhoni style of review. Dhoni comes in the middle of the pitch, he suddenly review the field setup, the type of bowling he should do, then he take a decision. It will become like that. It will be individual based, not an institutional line of learning. Then, how do you create continuously improving review mechanism, control mechanisms, from data to parameters to dashboards, how friendly it is, so that any new problems, any new innovations which are going to be driven are easily done out of it. Then metadata. You may be knowing, that's what I said, sometimes the data are not directly coming into the platform, they have to be calculated. For example, productivity. Some terms will come from SAP, something will come from HR sources. So you divide the ratio of these two. Then something else comes that is called metadata. You calculate data out of it by calculation. Then single source of truth. It's another important challenge. UltraTech has got about 20 plants. I'm giving UltraTech as an example because there are other companies also who has got multiple geography location plants throughout India, throughout the world. So each plant calculates the KPIs, the key performance index, based on their own understanding. So a person sitting at a CXO level will not be able to compare the KPI because some of them are adding it, some of them are deleting it, some of them are a little bit tweaking it. So the platform should able to flexibly give a solution which will give you single source of truth. Then another one, the dashboard creation should not be done by IT or an external or once in a while. It should be a continuous process. So user should be able to create dashboard. Tableau, Python and all has got a restricted use, and not everybody in the shop floors are conversant. Then what benefits these all are going to show? One is the bottom-up involvement of everybody. Everybody means a worker should have a handheld device. He should be able to read data, act on data to fix a problem, to avoid a problem, to escalate a problem. And finally, the time to react from a problem which is occurring or a solution which is required to the execution. So the agile platform, there are platforms which are available, which are evolving in discussion with the industry. As I said, we have abundance of data, but lack of insights because they are continuously evolving and growing. And I'll finally touch upon the enemies of data. First thing I call it as dark data. Datas which are not in readily consumable form. You need to download, format, you have to put control limit, upper control limit, lower control limit, you have to add critical to quality, you have to add budget, then you have to create a dashboard. So datas which are not readily available for consumption are dead datas. Then second one is about data island. Data island is nothing but you need a person to retrieve data, or you have to go to a particular location to get the data because they are not integrated. They are all standalone digital system or platforms. Third, and the final is data silos. If you even look at, most of you would have used ERP because you have about 5 years of experience. Hardly 10-15% of the data in ERPs are used. You all agree. Remaining 75-80% of the data are not used at all. They create redundancy, they create junk, they occupy server space. So the data which are standalone, which are not used, which are initially conceptualized by some consultants or ERP seller, is of no use to us. So these three are data enemies. So before I conclude my session, I want to appreciate the PGPM students because they have 3 priorities: studies, of course. They stopped earning, most of you. They've seen money, they stopped earning. It's very difficult. Money is, entices you and attracts you. And third, of course, they have to look after their family. Some of you will have son, daughter. Some of you have grandson also. No, okay. So one round of applause to them before I wind up my session. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sriram. Your insights were surely rich and informative. We now have presentation from the leadership of team of Blue Yonder, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the guest. Our first guest is Mr. Naveen Upadhyay. He is the Vice President, Customer Success at Blue Yonder. He leads the India APAC organization for global planning and is responsible for global implementation and support for the BY planning products. Before Blue Yonder, he has worked for Oracle, SAP, and Deloitte Consulting. He has over 25 years of experience in specializing, building and growing service delivery for SaaS organization, global delivery for on-premise and cloud products, supply chain management, and digital transformation.
Our second guest from Blue Yonder is Mr. Ravi Shrivastava. He's the alumnus of SPJIMR from the batch of 2002. He is Senior Director, Strategic Services at Blue Yonder. Mr. Srivastava has over 20 years of experience in supply chain strategy, transformation, and analytics. At Blue Yonder, he has successfully led multiple engagements including strategic process design, architecting end-to-end SCM solutions, supply chain analytics, pre-sales and sales for customers across the US, Europe, and Asia. In the past, he has worked with Mindtree Consulting and TCS. We call upon Mr. Ravi Srivastava and Mr. Naveen Upadhyay for their presentation.
A wonderful experience seeing all the bright faces. The only thing which is making me nervous was the initial part, the introduction given by Professor Nilendra about the expectation from the presentations. And the second part was whatever challenges Dr. Varun presented. Correct? So it is always tough to follow great speakers, and followed by Mr. Sriram, who spoke about the data part, correct? And I just want to start, I had put together a few slides, but in the interest of time, probably we will use slides only for a point of reference, and we'll probably continue in a more of a conversation way. And let's see, we have 15-20 minutes. I'm not too sure we can do justice with the topic, but why don't we utilize this time for introducing the topic, and if Dr. Nilendra helps me, then probably we'll have a guest lecture sometime later when we will have a deep dive conversation on this topic, because I just want to be respectful to the topic. So let me start with setting the stage about the business problem. There were a lot of serious conversation happening earlier with the insights provided by Dr. Varun, and a lot of insight by Mr. Sriram about the data and all the good stuff. So let's make it a little light. Let's talk about something which is lighter than that. Let's talk about IPL, and let's talk about ice cream. So ice cream, as you would know, is considered as a delicacy which is mostly linked with seasonal demand. Summer we eat more ice cream, winter we eat less, correct? So obviously the places which are hotter than the other places would have more demand. So if you talk about IPL, Bangalore, I mean, during the time when IPL was going on, IPL, we picked the topic because this is close to my heart. I'm a big cricket fan. So it just concluded, and when the IPL matches were going on, we were just thinking about how somebody would manage the ice cream demand. So if you see, during the IPL season, Bangalore was having a temperature somewhere in 20s, early 20s, I would say, wonderful time, correct? Ravi, you were there. And if you look at the temperature in Mumbai, where quite a few matches were played, was what, 35, 40, or maybe more than 40? So think about a person who's selling ice creams, or the stores which were selling ice creams close to Wankhede Stadium, correct? How would anybody know how much ice cream to kind of keep in stock so that, number one, they are having enough material to fulfill the desire? So people at the same time, it is a perishable thing. They are not running into a scenario where they are losing the material, correct? It gets spoiled pretty quickly. Think about, to make it a little more interesting, within Mumbai, we understand the temperatures were high. There is a more requirement for ice cream. We are in Andheri, which is how far from Wankhede Stadium? It's a little far, correct? Not too.
Quite far.
20 kilometers. 20 kilometers is far enough in Mumbai, correct? The demand for ice cream, though IPL matches are happening in Mumbai, would be little different in Andheri than close to Wankhede Stadium. So putting a logic that it is seasonal, it comes with summer, it is directly proportional to the temperature rise, it is proportional to an event, and then within the city of event, within the location, the bottom line is it is hyper-personalized. So this is the new world we are living in, and then you have, as Dr. Varun spoke about, that you have the service providers 10-minute delivery, correct? So I'm not too sure how they manage it, because I take roughly 2 hours to decide what to buy. And these guys kind of deliver it in 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So think about those kind of requirements and how these guys are handling it. So if we look at the traditional supply chain, I'll just quickly run through. So on this slide, the only key point which I'm trying to send across is within few years, you will have 6 major, I would say, generations of end consumers who will require your products or services. On the right-hand side, it is more of the consumer products demand revenue graph, which shows that it is fairly consistent or kind of declining. Mergers, acquisitions, negative shareholder return, direct-to-consumer kind of a phenomena rather than the old retail-based distribution thing. So these are the new requirements which are changing the way supply chain was understood in the olden days. If you look at the paradigm shift, most of the older, I would say, IT products or the applications which were in the supply chain area were mostly focusing on the bottom part of the chart, which is predictable, correct? So most of the products were focusing on the historical data, how I sold last year, how I sold last month, how I sold last week will basically give me some idea how my future is going to look like, correct? It was probably not considering about the hyper-personalization, was not considering the fact about the direct-to-consumer part, converging businesses, accelerator speed of scale, and things like which are absolutely external phenomena. The Ukraine war, it has changed a lot, correct? The kind of disruption we see in supply chain because of these external factors, COVID, nobody had thought about it, correct? Suddenly you see that direct-to-consumer market boomed, and whatever retail supply chain or whatever retail business we were having had a big hit, correct? So some of these things which we require, so your older way of supply chain or the traditional supply chain, let me come to the topic, I mean a lot of discussion about which was setting the stage, is capable of handling those predictions which are based on the historical data, which is mostly internal to the organization. But the things which are influencing your future demand, your forecast and other things which are not internal to the organization were not very known. So we need something which can help us with the unpredictable portion of the slide. Little bit of difference about the traditional supply chain, internally sourced information. We spoke about siloed and latency ridden data. In the intelligent supply chain, which it is trying to address is the speed, I would say synchronization with the warehouse and transportation execution, reducing the latency and the real-time visibility, which is more of the control tower kind of concepts, which probably we will cover in the guest lecture. We do not have enough time for that here, is where you can have the visibility how your goods are moving, where it is, and all of that good part. AI and ML is one of the technology which is being used for intelligent supply chain, and it is fairly advanced as of now, but I do see certain things like IoT will take the center stage in coming months, coming years. Why now? A lot of real-time data available, as Mr. Sriram said, cloud computing, 5G coming, limitless computing power, and the managed solution services, which is more of, which goes to the consulting services like what Rohit does for living, is where as a manufacturing unit or a retailer, you need not worry about too much of your IT solutions. There is somebody like Rohit who can manage solution services for you. So you can go for the best and the latest part. Advanced data sciences, machine learning and AI, there are self-learning algorithms which will basically, you'll have to train them, but they will figure out which parameters to focus on, and they will suggest you how to read the data and what need to be done. So some of those things which were not there earlier are becoming relevant now. Probably skip this slide which talks about the predictive demand. Okay, so predictive demand, more of a thing which I was focusing on earlier, that based on the internal data versus taking into consideration the external data sources. So this is something which is possible with the intelligent supply chain. One of the real life example is the transportation planning. We were talking about TMS in our discussion with Mr. Nilendra before this session, and we were talking about the transportation management problems. So one of the key problems with the global transportation management is, I mean, there are quite a few goods which are temperature sensitive, so you need equipments which can manage those temperatures, and temperature is something which is dependent on one of the factors is obviously the carrier, how the temperature is managed. The other thing is the kind of climate this vehicle is going to pass through during that time, and things like how long it takes to kind of reach to the end destination. So some of these things we can manage better with the intelligent supply chain now, which was probably one of the challenges earlier. So I would probably try to stop here at this. I have a couple of more slides which are talking more around the Blue Yonder spectrum of products in the intelligent supply chain space. We can probably use it for the question and answers, or we can probably, if we have time, we can discuss further now. Shall we park? Okay. Okay. So one of the things, as we were discussing, which was a challenge going to the data part, most of the organizations, including Blue Yonder, if you see, these organizations or the product sets were made by acquiring various organizations. So most of the IT organizations in this space, if you see, they had one of the core products or a small set of core products, and then they kept on acquiring various things, which makes it look from the marketing point of view, like when you go to a client, you say that I have a solution in the demand space, I have a solution in SNOP space, I have a solution in transportation management and WMS and all of the things. One of the challenge which they face there is all of these solutions were built in different shops. And all of these solutions were built using different data model, which means that when it comes to integrating all the solutions where one of the module need to talk to the other module, you face challenges because the data model was different. So this was one of the challenge which was figured out and which was being addressed by the organization where I come from, Blue Yonder, where we are going to build the entire platform on Microsoft Azure, which will take care of the foundational services. On top of that, we have something which is a native Luminate platform, which will take care of the integration APIs. Data model is already taken care of, and it will take care of IIT and the workflow orchestration part of that. So which means that the client need not worry about the bottom two layers, and the entire solution footprint would be microservice driven, where the applications would be interacting with the platforms below. So which would make it reasonably faster, and which will make it kind of relatively easy for the partners and customers to build further applications on top of that, which was kind of little rigid earlier. So those are some of the things which we are coming up with. And this was all I wanted to share. And I'll probably conclude my conversation by showing a picture which was the older days where we used to say that big fish eats the smaller one. Now with the intelligent supply chain, it is all about speed. So here the faster fish will basically eat the slower one. Thanks a lot for your time. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm part of this organization for your institute around 2002 and coming to institute a couple of times. And so good privilege here to be with all of you and sharing some of the thought. So I will not take too much of time. I will, some of the slides, points are already covered by Naveen. I will just bring you two more points which are left out, which is very important. Why I want to bring this point in today's context, because this is something is happening in today's industry and today's environment, and that is what we are seeing our customers are also looking for. As we have Sriram, we have Naveen, they will also acknowledge that the kind of decisions they are taking right now, it was not very straightforward decision. So I will bring this slide for everyone discussion that maybe in the books and the college when we were reading very strategically that we will do demand planning, we will do supply planning, then we'll do the transportation planning. That's what you are reading till now. But what is happening, maybe the COVID is just an example, and maybe if you have read SNOP, they say it's a monthly process, quarterly process, annual process. But what is happening that when the decisions are changing, the dynamics are changing, what we are really observing, these decisions are not taken in isolation. The time frame is getting reduced. And that's where the focus has become more. My SNOP is no longer a monthly process. I'm taking a weekly SNOP also. There are companies who are running weekly decision-making process in that case. So that is what is coming in that one, that whole time frame of the planning has reduced. The strategic planning, long-term planning, short-term planning, the boundary has become quite, they're no longer a boundary. People are taking those decisions very quickly. Due to COVID, my networks, in the COVID situation, my supply shortage, those are little a long-term decision people are taking in a short-term decision. Alternate supplier options they are exploring, alternate network options exploring. So that will also become a challenge as a software vendor for us to solve this problem. So it's no longer a business problem. They are also asking that we don't need a solver with taking a one-day run. We want a quick solve. And that's where the technology become important, that how do we make the solving time less reduction. We don't wait 3 hours, 4 hours of solving. How do we make a quick solve? And I want to take that decision and I want to make a planning. So if my ship is getting disrupted, my truck is getting disrupted, I want to replan immediately. And that's where the whole technology, you can see the focus is my planning and the right side is execution. The boundary become common. They have to take a decision together. So whether it's a visibility, whether it's a order fulfillment, whether it's a transportation, it becomes quite important that they can come together. And that's where this, if you look at this slide, this is a business requirement which we are coming. And on top of that, they are looking for a customer to collaborate, user to collaborate. At the same time, I want an analytical skill. To meet this requirement, you need a technology, right? And that's where these slides come into picture, that I need a planning, I need execution, I need logistic on a common platform. To support that, I need an analytic layer, and to support that, I need an infrastructure, which is a cloud, right? So that's kind of thought process going on in the industry, and that's the innovation is going on. That's where the SaaS is coming into picture, the SaaS component, and the boundary between these solutions are slightly merging together to provide it. And as we mentioned, that it's no longer vendors who provide this problem. That's why the whole ecosystem is open, not only for the partners, they can also develop a lot of their products on top of it. So it becomes a more and more seamless kind of ecosystem. So this is the kind of, I would say, intelligent, if you're going towards intelligent supply chain, I think the decision making is very fast, quick decisions, fast decisions, connectivity, a common platform become a need for you. And as you're studying in this syllabus, I would like you to focus that this is something a go forward direction what we are seeing. Traditional supply chain, what Naveen has talked about, is there. Those concepts are still valid, right? We are not saying concept is gone. But how we are applying those concepts, the frequency has increased a lot. And people are not asking that you have to be demand expert or supply expert. We are looking for people who are end-to-end expert in this case. So I will stop the topic here, but this is the topic I want to cover as what is relevant for what we are seeing as a customer, what our customers are asking, where are we focusing on, that become more relevant in the last 2 to 3 years. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the time. Thank you.
Welcome back. Participants of the PGPM batch of 2022, Shantanu Sharma, Pushkar Kulkarni, Aditya Ganju and Purnanand Chittal have put together a presentation on the topic Intelligent Supply Chain. Shantanu has 7.5 years of industry experience in engineering, procurement and construction management sectors for energy and chemicals projects at Fluor Corporation. He has worked on stakeholder management, operations and supply chain management and procurement activities. Aditya has 5.5 years of experience in Imami Agrotech Limited, an FMCG company, and at Udaan.com in the area of e-commerce. He has worked in the domain of long-haul transportation, logistics design, and last-mile delivery. Purnanand has around 5.5 years of experience in the aerospace and healthcare sector. He worked as a design engineer and worked on product research and development at General Electric Healthcare Division. Pushkar again comes with 5.5 years of experience in the automotive sector and digital technologies at Mahindra's Auto Division and 3D Engineering Automation. He worked in the domain of end-to-end production and quality management, new products, and prototyping. Over to you, gentlemen.
Hello, good morning. So welcome to the Intelligent Supply Chain back after the break. I hope you had a good one. So let me take you to the walkthrough which we are planning to go ahead today. So first we'll talk about few of the challenges or the disruptions happened post-COVID or near around that time. We'll look at some case studies and India story, how it is affecting India. And then post that we'll draw some insights and look at some research, what is academia talking on that. Then we'll get some recommendations for you and we'll see how to go about that. So before that, let me ask you some perceptions about logistics and supply chain, guys. So you must be knowing that the perceptions differ from different people. So the general perception is not so good. But while we were researching, I found an interesting slide, and I think most of you would be able to relate to it, what other people think about us. So if you see at the last what really I do, it can summarize everything. So coming to the serious topic on what are the few disruptions which happened over the years. So ranging from COVID-19, Suez Canal blockage, there was semiconductor shortage, even the shipping containers were shortage, and port congestions were also observed at multiple locations, and the most recent one being the Russia-Ukraine war. But do you think that this is not affecting India, or is India immune to this? So there could be two answers to it. One is no, and other one is definitely not. So what do you guys think? No points for guessing, it is definitely not. So India is affected and it's not immune to such changes. So let us look at some Indian insights and Indian aspect on how this coronavirus or all these disruptions have caused over the few years. So first issue we have shortlisted was about edible oil and how it has impacted the sales and the prices of that. So due to the impact of Ukraine war, you can see that the prices have risen by around 20% because most of the sunflower oils were imported from Ukraine and it is under war. The second issue is the freight costs. They have gone up, especially during the Suez Canal part, and it has mostly affected the western coast of India. Next issue is about the port closures or port congestions, which was about from the China side, and you can see the eastern coast getting affected. And because of that, all of the electronic items, the prices have risen by around 3 to 5%. And overall, the last issue which we have taken up is the semiconductor shortage. So you can see that it has impacted India's entire electronics supply chain, and especially the PC manufacturing and the automotive sector has hit badly. So now, let us dive deep into one of the disruptions, that is the semiconductor chip shortage issue, and we'll look at some problems, the causes, and we have some recommendations for them.
As Pushkar has already mentioned, the major disruption has been the shortage of semiconductor chips. The effect has been enormous. You can see that. The graph shows that the sales of the automobiles in India rose up and then went down because there was not enough of the chips to supply the cars. The graph also shows that the effect had been long-lasting. They have been there for more than a year and will stay. That is what we assume right now. Impact has been huge. As you can see, in the last 1.5 years, the prices of the chips have shot up by 25%. The average lead time of the supply, which was around 12 weeks earlier, has gone up to a year now. The demand is high, and so we are facing the problems. The companies have to plan a year in advance. Now, as we believe that our books are becoming digital, our phones are becoming smarter, and cars more autonomous, there is no reason to believe that the demand would stagnate at any point of future. So that the problem might even increase in future. Let's see the causes behind this. Although there are many reasons why we say the chip shortage has happened, one of the major reasons is the difference between demand and supply. As you can see, in the first 9 years of the last decade, the demand and the sales went up by 38%, but it took them just 2 more years to add another 40%. The demand is enormous right now. And as Pushkar has already mentioned, each and every industry is impacted, and each and every industry in India and in the world is demanding more and more. But there's a problem. While the demand is very high, there are very few companies that can supply. I'm talking about the companies that produce electronic goods. For example, Qualcomm, Samsung, or Apple. While they produce the goods, there are even fewer companies that have the expertise, technology, and core competency to manufacture the chips. These chip suppliers like TSMC or Samsung or Global Foundries supply the chips to the electronic goods companies. But the competition is very high, and it is so high that Intel, that has been a strongholder in this field, is now planning to outsource a part of its manufacturing to TSMC. Again, TSMC, Global Foundries, and other companies need some more equipment to get their chips manufacturing. And guess what? There are very fewer companies that can supply those lithographic equipment, and the thing gets even narrower. Now for this equipment, they need a gas called neon gas. And there is just one supplier in the whole world that supplies 70% of the neon gas. And that supplier is Ukraine, and it is in the state of war. So overall, the point here is that the whole supply chain is extremely fragile, and it can be disrupted by a small change at any point of time. And by that, I mean the loss or the sales shortage was inevitable. It had to happen. It was not about whether it would happen. It was about when that would happen.
So what can we do in such scenarios? Let us move back to the drawing board and look at some of the researchers, what our researchers have to say about it. So first study which we have selected is supplier selection. As we have seen in the earlier slide, one of the most important aspects of any supply chain is how do we select our suppliers. And for that, there is one research study performed around long-term supplier-buyer relationship, and it talks about supplier quality, delivery, service, and cost. And results were not so surprising. The results were that supplier quality, performance, and delivery played a significant role, while the cost and the buyer satisfaction were not so significant. But is it really the truth? Do costs don't matter when we say about supply chain? Well, it may not matter in the buyer-supplier long-term relationship, but if we go to our procurement team and say that cost doesn't matter, they will not take it very positively. Therefore, our second study is about cost and price volatility optimization. For that, the researchers have used mixed integer linear programming, data-driven architecture, along with machine learning to determine the correct price. By determining the correct price, we can also determine the time at which the order needs to be placed. Then we have a much thought about technology was also covered in the slide by Mr. Naveen, the AI and ML in supply chain. And it was predicted that in near term or in the short term, the AI and ML will not have a significant impact. But if we talk about long term, 61% of saving in manufacturing will come in long run. And also 45% of EBIT will be realized in long run. But how it can be implemented? It will be implemented through transport route optimization, forecasting more accurately, and rationing the stocks. And we will be looking at some of the recommendations in the future. For here also, there is one framework developed by researchers, but there is a problem. All the AI/ML framework uses historical sales, and also the major disruptions such as COVID are not taken into account. So what do we need to do? We need to have a human supply chain expert to monitor, evaluate, and control. So I think it is safe to assume that our jobs are still safe for some time. Next, coming on to industry after the research, this is a small case from my previous work experience where we were supplying equipment from Bangalore to Kuwait port. And it is a small change which we have done. In first case, we have not used any automated system. We were tracking tracing the demands manually. And as a result, we had 2 equipment lost and there was no traceability. One was repurchase cost, another one, the major cost was construction schedule impact, which significantly played an important role. In the next project, we have used just a simple RFID-based technique to track our goods. And not surprisingly, there was no loss of equipment, but also we had data. As Mr. Sriram talked about in his slide, that data is one of the most important things and it is constantly changing. So by small automation, we were able to capture data, and data, as we say, is the new oil, which can be further utilized for data-driven optimization techniques. Since such a small change has created a huge impact, let us look at few of the recommendations.
With all these problems, what we can do is, in ideal conditions, we can go to a Santa and ask for a solution for the supply chain problems. But in this realistic world, it is not possible at all. So here we have a few realistic recommendations in the coming slides. A small RFID implementation has made such a big impact, but we have few more recommendations which can be applicable to semiconductor industry or any other industry as well in generic. Every industry has its own weightage and lead time depending on what business impact it can have in the long run. And a supplier gives precedence to the industry which has the highest weightage. So for example, if we take a battery industry may be, for now, maybe slightly ignored, but we know where electrification is heading all the industry towards. So that is the case. Now, when an industry tries to take the advantage of the weightage and tries to reduce its lead time of components, it may actually try to reduce its lead time of components. It has to either forego the price, what I mean to say is it has to pay a premium price, or else it has to reduce the weightage of the industry. So that's how it is going to impact the supplier and the industry relationship. So in this case, a supplier can use predictive analytics to weigh the industries and choose the best industry that they want to focus, or else industry can also use predictive analytics to know the uncertainties in demand, and they can predict how responsive they want to be in terms of supply chain, or they can choose to be normal in terms of operational supply chain. Industries can also use blockchain technology in which it will help them to have better traceability, better visibility, and better compliance. So that will actually help them to reduce a lot of logistics and administrative costs. So here we have a small use case scenario in which there was blockchain implemented in fleet tracking. It actually helped the sellers, buyers, and also the officials to track the record. And also blockchain helped to secure transactions that helped them to reduce time to transport. Here we also know that blockchain can actually make a big impact in terms of administrative and logistic timelines and reduce it by almost around 85%. Few more recommendations here we have is, there are many stakeholders involved here in which they can be useful in building a resilient supply chain. So a company can focus on building the overall capacity and also strategically focus on localization of building capacity. A company can become strategically lean by buying on order, and also they can reduce the slack or buffer. So just-in-time supply chain systems actually focus on buying orders, and also they can focus on single source or multi-sources components. A company can reduce the bullwhip effect by actually using the digital capabilities to reduce all the traditional, by connecting all the traditional business silos in the business units, that will help them to better collaborate and integrate in the supply chain process. And a company can use digital transformation technologies in business, technology, operational considerations, and workforce that will help them to be ready for any future supply chain problems and be more adaptive. So these are few expert opinions that reinforces all the analysis that we have done. So we can take a second or two to go through this. So in short, what we can say is, now next time you pick up your phone to order something, just remember that the phone, the components that has been on your phone has traveled so many borders, and there is so much brain behind that in building the intelligent supply chain system. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for showcasing your understanding on the theme. We have had the privilege of knowing three of our panelists, Mr. Sriram, Mr. Naveen Upadhyay, and Mr. Ravi Shrivastava. As we get up for the panel discussion, we would like to take this opportunity to introduce the three eminent guests who are here with us today. Our next panelist is Mr. Abhinav Sinha. He is the head of control tower and supply operation for Africa, India, and Middle East. Mr. Sinha has more than 15 years of experience in the supply chain and logistic domain. He has experience in a broad range of industries ranging from FMCG, consumer durables, automotive, food, and personal care. He has led multiple supply chain transformation and business partnering strategies ranging from network redesign, leveraging multimodal logistics, portfolio rationalization, to setting up supply chain greenfield projects. He began his journey with Tata Motors and has worked with organizations like Kraft Heinz, ITC, Philip, Cargill before joining Michelin.
Our next panelist is Mr. Manish Garg. Mr. Garg is a director at Thoucentric and leads the supply chain consulting practice globally. He graduated from IIT Delhi and joined GE as part of their operations management leadership program. He completed his full-time MBA with SPJIMR Mumbai in the year 2005, after which he worked with I2 Technologies, which is now JDA Blue Yonder, and Infosys before joining Thoucentric. He has more than 20 years of experience and has worked with multiple Fortune 500 clients on large-scale business transformation projects in all areas of supply chain, be it supply chain planning, procurement, manufacturing, or logistics. He's a turnaround specialist and specializes in delivering business value from strategic initiatives.
Our next panelist is Mr. Rohit Parvatikar. He is a senior director at Capgemini, India, and has over 20 years of experience. He heads several customer accounts with Capgemini and steers the planning center of excellence for several other customers. In his current role, he is responsible for driving operations for CPG customer, providing recommendation on process improvement, and is also responsible for delivering business impacts for them. He comes with expertise in various areas of supply chain management like sales and operation planning, demand planning, end-of-life planning, amongst others. His experience cut across several industries like consumer packaged goods, semiconductor, retail, and electronics.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, Mr. Garg, and Mr. Parvatikar for joining us today. We are ready to start the much-awaited panel discussion. May we invite all our panelists on the stage, Mr. Sriram, Mr. Naveen Upadhyay, Mr. Ravi Srivastava, Mr. Abhinav Sinha, Mr. Manish Garg, and Mr. Rohit Parvatikar, along with our moderator for the discussion, Professor Nilendra Singh Pawar.